Wolfschanz, Hitler's secret bunker. Imagine. The year is 1941. Europe is burning. The Nazis are advancing, the fronts have turned into bloodbaths. And Hitler is withdrawing to a mysterious place to launch his greatest invasion plan, Operation Barbarossa. This is no ordinary headquarters. It is a shelter hidden behind 6-meter-thick concrete walls, filled with the mingled scents of dense diesel and pine. Its name, Wolfschanz, the Wolf's Lair. This was not just a headquarters, it was the brain of the Nazis' dream to redesign Europe. But at the same time, it was also the center of paranoia, the fear of betrayal, and dark secrets. Hitler chose this base to command Operation Barbarossa. It was hidden deep in the forests of Poland, near Kętrzyn, Rasenburg. This 250-hectare area contained over 80 buildings, underground tunnels, concrete blocks, and bomb-proof shelters. Wolfschanz was so secret that villages of civilians approaching the area were evacuated, and the region was completely isolated. From the outside, the huge concrete blocks were covered with moss. The roofs were camouflaged with a forest floor, covered with soil and tree branches. It was like an invisible city. Here, Hitler was not only a commander but also played the role of a wolf. This wolf nickname he gave himself symbolized both his savage leadership style and his paranoid state of mind. The atmosphere of the bunker was dark and gloomy. The humidity inside, the smell of diesel, the constant hum of generators. Hitler's right-hand man, Martin Bormann, compared this place more to a cemetery than a military base. But the true importance of Wolfschanz lies in the events that took place there. The orders that determined the course of the war were given within these walls. And one of the most dramatic moments was the most famous assassination attempt on Hitler, Operation July 20th, 1944, taking place right here. But this story is not just an assassination attempt. Wolfschanz also reveals Hitler's state of mind, his fears, and his increasing paranoia. The construction of Wolfschanz began in the autumn of 1940. The Nazis coded this project as Führerhauptquartier, meaning the Führer's main headquarters. Thousands of workers were employed in the construction of this secret base. German engineers worked for months on this project, managed by the Todt organization, and an engineering marvel emerged. The headquarters was divided into 3 security rings. A first ring, Hitler's bunker, meeting rooms, communication center. A second ring, the area where high-ranking Nazi generals and advisors stayed. A third ring, guard units, air defense systems, and minefields. Hitler's main bunker had walls 2.5 meters thick. It was so sturdy that even if the Allies attempted to bomb it, the shelter had a high chance of surviving. Yet, Hitler always wanted more security. That's why there were traps, minefields, and double checkpoints at the entrances. This base was designed not only for military purposes but also for Hitler's daily life. The headquarters had a cinema, a flower garden, and even a tea salon. But all this comfort could not dispel the gloomy atmosphere of the place. It was still dark, cold, and ominous. The construction of Wolfschanz was so meticulous that even the trees above the complex were preserved. This made it almost impossible to detect from the air. It was like a Nazi city buried underground. But this massive headquarters had a curse. However well protected Hitler was here, his fears grew equally. The meetings he held with his generals became increasingly tense. The course of the war was slowly changing, and within these walls, the most critical decisions in history were to be made. From his first days at Wolfschanz, Hitler listened to his generals one by one, dissecting the plans for Operation Barbarossa. At first, everything seemed to be going as planned. The Wehrmacht armies advanced rapidly, capturing Soviet territories. However, as time passed, things began to go wrong on the Eastern Front. The halting of German troops on the outskirts of Moscow devastated Hitler's morale. These failures made the atmosphere at Wolfschanz even more tense. In the meeting rooms, it was no longer cries of victory that echoed, but angry orders. Hitler blamed his generals, accusing them of cowardice and treason. Even his closest staff, like Wilhelm Keitel and Alfred Jodl, felt his wrath. During this period, Hitler's paranoia peaked. He suspected everyone, having even those closest to him watched. He was constantly fed by Bormann's reports, Goebbels' propaganda notes, and files from Himmler's Gestapo. This information drove Hitler into an even darker state of mind. Wolfschanz had now transformed from just a headquarters into a psychological prison. The generals, sitting around the Führer's table, feared an angry outburst at any moment. The meetings lasted for hours, the atmosphere becoming almost suffocating. Hitler would stay up until morning over war maps, changing operational plans one by one. It was in this very atmosphere that a dark idea occurred to some officers. The only way to stop Hitler was to eliminate him. Claus von Stauffenberg and other conspirators slowly began to come together. Initially, this was just a dream whispered about. But after the Stalingrad disaster, this dream turned into a plan. This plan was to be carried out in one of Wolfschanz's most secure rooms. In this place, considered the heart of the Nazi regime, one of history's boldest assassination attempts was being prepared. On the morning of July 20, 1944, there was extraordinary activity at Wolfschanz. Hitler was to hold a meeting with his generals to assess the situation on the Eastern Front. Claus von Stauffenberg arrived at the headquarters early that morning. This heroic officer, who had lost one hand and one eye in North Africa, was now not just a staff officer but also an assassin. In his briefcase, he carried a small but deadly bomb. The plan was simple. He would place the bomb under the meeting table and leave the room. Everything else would happen in seconds. The meeting room was normally a barracks surrounded by heavy concrete walls, but that day the weather was very hot. Therefore, the meeting was held in a building with wooden paneling. This detail was crucial enough to change the course of history. Wooden walls, instead of concrete, would greatly reduce the impact of the explosion. Stauffenberg carefully placed his briefcase under the table. It contained 2 bombs, but due to lack of time, he could only activate one. He then asked permission to leave the room. Minutes later, the explosion occurred. A powerful explosion shook the forest. For people around the table lost their lives. But miraculously, Hitler survived. At the moment of the explosion, the thick leg of the table had created a barrier between Hitler and the bomb. The Führer escaped with minor injuries. Great chaos broke out at Wolfschanz. Smoke rose, soldiers ran around. At first, everyone thought Hitler was dead. But shortly after, the news that he was alive spread. This news sealed the fate of the conspiracy. When Stauffenberg and the other conspirators returned to Berlin, they launched the coup attempt, but when it emerged that Hitler was alive, the plan collapsed. The conspirators were captured, interrogated mercilessly, and executed. After this event, Wolfschanz became both a refuge and a curse for Hitler. His paranoia multiplied. Security measures were doubled, and meetings were now held with a smaller team. After the July 20th assassination attempt, Hitler began to live like a ghost at Wolfschanz. He no longer trusted anyone. Security measures at the headquarters were tightened so much that entering required passing through numerous checkpoints. Even generals in his inner circle could not enter the Führer's presence without being searched. This event caused a deep fracture in Hitler's character. His existing paranoia now became a complete obsession. Meetings with generals became even shorter and more tense. He began making decisions almost alone. He would not listen to criticisms that could change the course of the war, considering even the smallest objection as treason. During this period, Wolfschanz turned into a truly dark center. Outside, the Allies were advancing, fronts were collapsing one by one. Inside, Hitler was moving imaginary armies on maps, making victory plans with non-existent units. By the end of 1944, the Eastern Front began to completely collapse. When the Soviet army advanced into Poland, Wolfschanz was no longer a safe place. Hitler finally decided to leave. On November 20, 1944, he left this ominous headquarters for the last time and returned to Berlin. Shortly after Hitler's departure, the Nazi army blew it up. The aim was to prevent the strategic secrets here from falling into Allied hands. Despite the explosions, most of the huge concrete blocks remained standing, as if this place wanted to continue bearing witness to history. Today, Wolfschanz is still a visitable site in Poland. The moss-covered concrete blocks still bear the scars of the explosions. Visitors feel the cold breath of a dark history on their necks. Some say they hear strange sounds in this area, that metal clanging sounds echo at night. Wolfschanz is not just a Nazi headquarters, it is also a silent witness to one of the darkest periods in history. And perhaps it still continues to whisper the secrets it holds. After Hitler's departure and the blowing up of Wolfschanz, this place turned into a veritable ghost town. The 6-meter-thick concrete blocks were not completely destroyed despite the explosions. Huge fragments still stand in the forest, like silent witnesses. But the real story of Wolfschanz did not end with the war. On the contrary, for years it became the stage for frightening legends and paranormal claims. Visitors say they encounter a deep silence when they step here. It's as if even the forest breathes differently here. Some tourists claim to capture strange light flares, shadows, and faint human silhouettes, especially when photographing the rooms where Hitler held meetings. A tour guide recounts hearing metal clanging sounds repeatedly during night tours. It's as if someone is still hammering nails or moving tables behind the walls. Sometimes a sound resembling the hum of old generators echoes through the forest. But of course, there are no generators working there. There are also those who believe Wolfschanz is cursed. Some say they had nightmares for days after visiting, seeing Hitler's face in their dreams. Even some villagers living in the area believe that people who get too close fall ill or experience misfortune. All these rumors fuel the belief that Wolfschanz is not just a Nazi headquarters, but also a center of dark energy. Perhaps these concrete blocks still hold within them Hitler's anger, fears, and the ominousness of those days. Wolfschanz is today a destination for those interested in history and dark tourism. Those who go there don't just see a Nazi base, they also touch one of the darkest periods in history. And every visitor asks the same question on their way out. Is this silence just the sound of the wind? Or is the past still alive in this forest?